Is that content that you're posting on your social media helping you, or is it hurting you? Is it possible that not all brand awareness is good brand awareness? And if so, how do we tell the difference between good content and bad content? Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to the MSP Sales Podcast. I am your host, Brian Gillette, and my guest today is perhaps best described as a force. He is a growing influence in the channel, and it's very possible that you've heard of him already. He was a head of sales for an MSP in Florida, where he grew that MSP for many, many years, sold millions of dollars in recurring revenue until most recently striking out on his own with his own marketing agency. We're going to talk to him today a little bit about what his experience has been, of course, selling managed services and the role that content has played in building not only the brand and the sales performance of his MSP, but the brand and performance of his marketing and content agency. Ladies and gentlemen, the indomitable Taher Hamid. Taher, thanks so much for being here, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, man. Happy to do it. How the turntables? You've been online like 3 times now. No,
I know.
I could be the one being interviewed.
I know you get to talk, and we'll see if my narcissistic tendencies allow you to have much time on the microphone. Or no, yeah, man. We met. I don't remember when we first met, but I think the first time we spoke was like when you were vetting me to come on your podcast.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, yep.
And we were in similar circles or something, but we obviously have a lot of overlap. You being a marketing guy, me being a sales guy. And we've had conversations not unlike the one we're going to have today, basically every time we sit down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about like what's working, what isn't working, why doesn't it work? You and I like to sort of nerd out on this stuff. So I thought it was appropriate that we just put hot mics in front of it, because every time you talk, you say things that I'm like, wow, I don't even know if he knows how profound that was.
Oh God, don't have the expectation. I'm going to say a bunch of dumb shit the whole time.
Well, don't worry. We'll edit around it. We'll make you look great.
All right,
well,
cool.
Listen, no, we were talking about content the other day, and what's so interesting in the landscape right now of the channel is that marketing and content, a lot of times people will make synonyms that they're like the exact same thing. If you are doing content, that equals marketing. When that's a form of marketing, it's a type of marketing, it's an outlet of marketing. If somebody they've got to have a RevOps structure, they've got to have a sales and marketing initiative of some kind, they want to do content. What does marketing mean outside of just posting every day on LinkedIn and Facebook?
Yeah. So I guess since this being a sales podcast, the easiest way to think about marketing, and the way I've definitely used it at my MSP, is the entire job of marketing is to make sales easier. That is it. That is the only thing marketing really exists for in my mind. And how content comes in is if you're creating truly interesting and valuable content that the target market is consuming before they get on a sales call with you, the sale comes significantly easier. And if you can follow up with content that means something other than just checking in or whatever crap people always do, and you're following with something that's really relevant to them, like they're a law firm and you send them a case study on a law firm you help that's near them, right?
Yeah.
Things like that to move the needle forward on sales, because most MSPs are not using content effectively. They do think posting on social media is marketing. As you say, it's definitely a form of marketing. But we have to think more strategically when it comes to marketing, especially in the B2B space.
You just hinted towards something that I don't think is talked about super often, which is like the different types of content. So you might segregate into top of funnel content and then bottom of funnel content. That might be one way to think of it.
Yeah.
But you've got the content that introduces people to you, and then you just said follow up with content. Talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
100%. I'm so glad you're explaining that, because that's literally how we have it structured in camp. Like, I want people to know, like, not all content is the same, because if you use all content on every aspect of the customer journey, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. An example of that is top of the funnel. We get weird as hell. I get super weird top of the funnel because the only thing I'm trying to do at top of the funnel is get somebody to remember me. And you can't do that with two people shaking hands. You can't do it with the generic content that most people are posting on their social and ads. I see people spending a lot of money on Facebook ads, and it's literally their logo and a list of services. I'm like, yeah, that's why people say Facebook ads doesn't work for MSPs, because they're using the most boring content imaginable. Mm-hmm. But now as we move down the funnel, like for instance, like if we have a sales meeting, we're not showing up to the meeting with a bunch of crazy content. Like we're not showing up with a presentation folder with like, oh, wacky, you know, or like funny or anything like that. Like now we have the appointment. We got their attention. We have the appointment. Now we shift to a more, not boring, but more professional aspect of like, we're a professional company. This is how we serve you. And then the follow-up, any content we use in the follow-up, lower down the funnel, and we're actually trying to close them, needs to be highly relevant to what you talked about in the sales meeting. If you're just sending them every testimonial video you have, it's not going to click as much as a testimonial from a client in their industry. Yeah. Or a Microsoft 365 comparison list, because that's one of their challenges. Their licenses are all over the place, right? When you follow up with content that's highly relevant at the end of the funnel, now you can move the needle versus every other MSP that literally just checks in every couple of weeks. I'm really glad you mentioned that because it's super important. It's a huge, important aspect of content. Yeah.
And it also justifies perhaps to an MSP listening going like, okay, I bought content already. So now I have content, but there is sort of this never ending, there's this insatiable belly inside of your marketing machine that needs content all the time.
Yeah.
To the point that you just made, that especially follow-up content or bottom or mid-funnel content, it has to be hyper situational. Mm-hmm. Like I think of a specific, like a case study or a testimonial. A testimonial is like an arrow in my quiver, but you can't have one arrow and then shoot it and then go get it and pull it out. Like you need a quiver full of arrows. Yeah. So you need a bunch of different testimonials, for example, that all describe different people in different situations receiving different results.
Yeah.
And that's going to help broaden the perceived value and also make the perceived value of what you do more understandable, more relatable to somebody in a specific scenario, right? So it's why you can't just buy one pack of content one time and think, I'm a marketer now. Well, hey, everybody I talk to is different. So why can't I just run the exact same play every single time? Yeah. And in some senses, you can use the same sales structure, but there is nuance, right, to the narrative and the message of the content itself.
100%. I just filmed an episode on custom content versus templates. And it almost seems like an anti-sale because I'm telling people, yes, you can use content providers like us or all the other different ones, and that's great. There is absolutely a place for templates because trying to create all custom content yourself, like good luck. It would take a full-time person just on content.
Right.
But in no way eliminates the MSP, whether it's a salesperson, marketing person, or owner, from creating their own custom content. You have to be able to create custom content, copy on your website, the specific things about your MSP. If you have a service stack that you name it some unique thing that has your branding on, like there has to be a place in a lot of places for custom content. And I think that's where a lot of MSPs might shoot themselves in the foot. They might work with a content provider and that's all they do. And it's like the ideal mix is using that to augment what you're doing in-house in custom for sure.
Right. Get yourself a first draft, some PNG files, maybe some Photoshop files and templates and stuff. And then start asking yourself, who am I selling to? Who am I running into out in the wild? And what do they care about?
Yeah.
And is this relevant to them? Or is this just a good starting point? And I need to start modifying it based off of the actual personas that I'm finding that are engaging with my brand. And how do I make myself more compelling to them?
100%. I see some people use content providers and they'll literally change the ebook from, executive guides to cybersecurity to executive guides to cybersecurity for accountants because they do accountants. So instead of just relying on the one accounting campaign or whatever, they can go, okay, I can tailor all this content because I know my marketing persona so well. This is a perfect template to change aspects of it, talking to that marketing persona itself. Right. And I just think that's genius. That's a perfect example of a marketing mind taking their tools and making it specific to their persona. I mean, it's genius and it's working very well.
Let me ask you this then, because this is probably something that the listener is going to be imagining. If we're saying, hey, not all content is good, sometimes bad content can have a really adverse effect on you. But before we get into like what that means, what is the difference between good content and bad content? Like, can you give us some examples of what the difference is and how one could spot the difference?
Totally. I heard a quote that I love, and it was from an author. And the sum of it is basically no tears in the author, no tears in the reader. No laughs from the author, no laughs from the reader. And their point was, as you're writing your book, if you're not feeling it as you write it, like the authors, they get emotional points. They laugh at funny points. The same with writers and everything else. If you don't feel that, the chances of the person watching the thing feeling that is zero. And we can double down on that when it comes to MSP, where IT and technology is extremely boring at times.
Right.
So as you're working on a piece of content, and again, we need to think about content in all three of those categories that we talked about on the funnel. If you're creating that piece of content and you're not feeling something, if it's supposed to be funny and you're not laughing, if it's supposed to be entertaining and you're not smiling, if it's supposed to be thoughtful and you're not thinking, it's not going to work with the prospect. So as you evaluate the content you use in each stage of the funnel, you have to say, is this truly helpful? Do I feel like, like when I'm writing an infographic that I know is going to help the target market, I'm like, this is fucking gold. Like, I'm excited when I'm writing it.
Yeah.
And if we don't feel that when we're looking at it, neither will the prospect.
Yeah.
So that's just the easiest way to identify, like, is it good content or bad content? And that's why when I ask MSPs, like, are you happy with the content that's on your website, that you're putting on social, that you're sending out to prospects? Most of the time they say no. But they don't know why they're saying no. It's like, it's because it's not creating anything in the mind of the prospect. It's not helping them. It's generic. It's stock photos galore. I mean, we use stock photos in our content, but it's used in a way to propel the message.
Right.
And I think the main reason this happens is a lot of times people are getting content from an agency that is hiring a marketing coordinator that doesn't truly know messaging. They don't truly know graphic design where we can compel an emotion out of our target market. So they just get coordinators to pump out content, and then it just turns into noise. Everyone says, oh, there's too much content nowadays. It's like, there's not enough good content nowadays. There's not. There's so ample room to stand out when you're using good content.
There's no such thing as too much story in humanity. There's no such thing. We go spend $25 at a movie that is the exact same 3-act structure as every movie we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Hero has a problem, meets a guide, goes through a set of challenges, establishes stakes to either succeed or fail.
Yep.
That's what we watch over and over again because it's ingrained in our DNA.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in the universe. Like, we are addicted to story. It's a huge part of the human experience. So if you are telling people a story and they can see themselves in it, they will never think, oh, not another one of these.
Yeah.
They will watch that movie, right? They will listen to that story. They will put themselves in the scenario. The question is, are you giving people information or are you telling somebody a story?
Yeah.
That might be another way of thinking of if content is going to have an impact.
Yeah. And dude, that's such a great point thinking about the movies. She's right. It's like 80% of movies are the same, and we still watch them and go, that was great. And like, I think about you tell the story about when you got frustrated and you pulled out the whiteboard and you just like, wrote out the process, and that kind of delivered the 7 steps or whatever it was. And like, it's not like you told that story once and you never told it again. You tell it a lot, and that's a good thing, right? Like, and I personally have struggled with that quite a bit, especially in the podcast. Like, I would tell one good example and one good story, and then like I wouldn't get back to it because I'm like, well, I already used that. And as of the last probably year, I'm realizing, no, people need to rehear it multiple times. Another example that I saw Russell Brunson at Magnetic Marketing. I've read all his books. I love them. And all 3 of his presentations were all content from his books. I've seen the perfect webinar multiple times. I've seen the value ladder. I've seen these things multiple times, yet seeing it in person again and reiterating. And I was like, this is so worth my money.
Yeah.
I know all the content, but it's that story of how we got there, how it motivates us to move forward, et cetera. So I think the movie example is a perfect example. And I just kind of thought about you and your whiteboard, and another great story to kind of get people going, oh, I can do this too.
And thank you for that. I could talk we could go on a big tangent about that specific story, because that, what you're describing, is a video that I made, and I wrote a LinkedIn post of it, of going to the whiteboard. Here's the thing. I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. That story is true, but it's also very, very carefully curated.
Yeah.
In the way that I tell it. I wrote that story in the most visual way that I could. We can call this a little mini masterclass on writing, is that I like to write content visually, because I have this theory that you want people to see the story in their mind, and we want them to then automatically populate themselves as the main character. And then they will have a connection to your brand. Yeah. Because they see themselves in the story and they go, oh, good, this is another thing I can use in the movie of my life. Because everybody is walking around thinking they're the main character of a story.
Yeah.
Because, and for all intents and purposes, they are. I made a video. I wrote the script. I worked on it for a couple of weeks. And the video says something to the effect of, I had too many nights in my office with a half-eaten microwave dinner on the desk and my head in my hands. I don't just say, I was fed up working late nights. I say it in a way that you see. And you see that. You see the guy with the unbuttoned top button and the tie is down in the 5 o'clock shadow. And sorry, honey, I'm going to be there later. And no, I know I'm going to get out of here as soon as I can. And you see the cold macaroni because it's so visual. And then I say, I walk over to my whiteboard, which is just another way of saying I wrote something down, but everybody can see that.
Yeah.
So, perhaps this ties back to that quote that you referenced earlier. If there's no cheers from the author, there's no cheers from the reader. If you're an MSP and you're posting another photo of a guy in a hoodie with Matrix flying behind him, the question is, does that scare you? Do you see that image and think, oh no, a villain? And maybe you do. But if you don't, my question to you is, what makes you think your non-technical audience is going to give a crap about it?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. And as you're writing that story, you were feeling it, right?
Yes.
And so that's just a great tip for any listeners. It's like, get comfortable writing. Like, you have to get comfortable writing, because that writing, that blog, that whatever you're doing can be repopulated in some of the best content ever, because it's coming from you. Too many people want to put their web copy and everything else on someone else, versus just spend 30 minutes writing an amazing draft that's coming from your head, pretending like you're talking like you do pretend you're in a sales meeting, you're talking to the prospect. Every time you get a head nod, that's content. Right. That's content, because it's like, oh, you've elicited emotion out of that person. We can, just like the story, we can hit on that so many times. So good.
Dude,
just
that's the nugget right there. If you're getting a head nod when you say something, just go, excuse me 1 second, and look down and write down what you just said.
100%.
And make it a LinkedIn post.
I would literally play that game in sales meetings. I would just see how many head nods I can get. Like, sometimes I'd be talking about, business premium, data loss prevention, which gets a lot of head nods from people. People really like data loss prevention, especially if you can explain it in non-layman terms. Didn't get the head nod there. I start shifting this way, because again, it's a story. You're telling the story to get them on board with the vision you're building for them. So I would say, like, the hoodie, that's such a good example. And one of the most overused pieces of all time, or the lock thing. So how do you create the same thing but actually elicit emotion? One of our best performing posts right now is like, the guy's at his desk and he has a bunch of superheroes at his computer that are like these beautifully illustrated things, and like they're attacking the bad guy in his computer, and he's like cheering him on. It's like pretty badass looking. I know it doesn't sound that exciting here, but when you visually see it, you're like, oh, that's such a cool way of saying, like, actually, I'm not afraid of the bad guy. What I want is a digital superhero team. And we made them like all these weird characters, like taking out the bad guys. So it's like that one always does well, because it's just visually like, whoa, what is this? And then they realize, okay, that's our cybersecurity team, as a metaphor. So again, just telling a story, a battle taking place on your network all the time, but you've got the right team, stuff like that, where you can take that simple. I think that's another thing, is people don't take the content far enough. They'll stop at the guy in the hoodie. It's like, well, how do we explain this way that hasn't been explained before? And you go 2 steps up, and you have a great piece of content.
And you don't take it far enough. That's it right there. If you're feeling like what you're doing is derivative, then it is. And then so will your customer. And we might all stop there and go, well, it's derivative, but I don't have time. And so I just have, this is what we'll do. And it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Which leads me to this question, Taher. Is it better than nothing for real? Is it better than nothing to post every day derivative, repetitive content on your social media? And I'm not, this isn't a leading question. I really want to hear your thoughts.
Nothing's definitely better.
Okay.
100%. I used to post once a week on my LinkedIn, and it would be really thoughtful. And it would, every time I posted, it was like a lot of engagement, and a lot of impressions and everything else. And then I got leads from my social media, but that's, we're just talking social media here. But in general, if you're posting blogs on your site, like I see some people do auto posts where they'll let some provider auto post on their website a blog. I'm like, that is probably the dumbest thing you could do. Sorry, I shouldn't say dumb, because a lot of people just don't know. So it's not dumb. It's just misinformed.
Mm-hmm.
We should not have some content provider posting whatever blog they want on our website. Our website is where all roads lead to the website. And if you're just posting content, and the one thing I hear all the time is like, well, it shows we're relevant and active. I can promise everyone listening here today, not a single prospect that lands on your site goes to your blogs and goes, they posted a week ago. This is a very active and legitimate company. Like, that is not the part of the blog. And I'm not sure what content provider has convinced somebody that that's okay. It is not okay. Never auto post on your blog. If you get anything from this, cut that out. The point of the blog is to rank for certain keywords that can get people to your site and have them search the rest of your site, which is well thought out, conversion focused, and thoughtful. That's the point of a blog, and to increase your domain authority. It is not to show you're relevant. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. Right. So that's just an example of bad content.
I mean, this is like a moving target and perhaps a futile question, but is it actually helping SEO to post a blog that literally 5,000 other people posted in the same 24 hours? Is it going to help your keyword search?
No, definitely not. Yeah, no. I think some people, like, we post blogs in MSP Camp. We tell people, like, just change it. Like, use this as a template. Like, how do you speak about Microsoft 365 Business Premium, et cetera? We almost never say, like, just copy paste this, because it's like, that's not going to have any SEO value, which is why I always tell people to, like, write. Some of our best performing blogs on the site of Alltech when I was there was things I wrote one of them I wrote at the airport on MSP pricing, because I was like, no one ever talks about pricing. This was like 7 years ago. And I was like, I mean, I can be, usually I'll give them general ideas about it. And that got us so many leads over the years, right? And it also increased our domain authority, because everyone started linking to that blog because there wasn't that content out there. And so now our domain authority went up, our SEO went up, everything else, because, like, I just took the time to write the thing I get questions about all the time.
Right. So I have blogs that are like repurposed from transcripts from videos that I post on LinkedIn. So I post a 60-second video.
Yep.
I give the transcript, and I was punching them up, and now my marketing guy writes them. And so he like takes the transcript, turns it into a whatever 500, 700, 1,000 word blog. And now he backlinks it to other stuff and like other references. He's a great blog writer.
Yeah.
But those are getting hundreds and hundreds of hits. And they're stories I have literally told for 2 years.
Yeah.
I posted that video on LinkedIn. I mean, I had 10 weeks of content, and I used the same 10 weeks for over a year.
Yeah.
Like, I went through like 5 times, and guess what? Actually, nobody even noticed, to be honest, because it was good. And every time I was adding new people, like, there's a little hack for you, is you don't need 52 weeks of you actually don't need that. And I don't know your thoughts on that, Taher, but you don't. I mean, you can change headers and you can rewrite the text post, but if you've got a great image, you could reuse that image every 6 months.
Totally.
I promise nobody remembers. And like, Got Milk used the same ads for 10 years, and we all still friggin' drink milk for some reason because of that ad. Right?
That's part of our SOP, is to repost the best content from 3 months ago, because it's going to perform again. It's going to perform well again. That's why we always see reposts on Reddit, because it's like, yep, still great. It's funny.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just funny that you mentioned the Got Milk example, because I've listened to a masterclass with the guys who did the Got Milk. They've done so many incredible advertisements, but even today, the guys who came up with the most prolific ad of all time, and Steve Jobs uses it in his marketing example of Got Milk, didn't even talk about the product. They talked about the absence of the product, right? Like, the most perfectly done ad. And to this day, those same people are trying to pitch their clients on being different and using content that stands out and being a little more excited or adding humor in. And to this day, their clients still, it's a battle. And that to anyone listening, especially if you're the owner, you can't be that person. If your marketing or advertising team is saying, hey, if we're going to make an impact, we got to be out there. We got to be different. You got to listen. Because that same advice was coming from the greatest marketers of all time. And still the clients don't want to do it because their brand image and whatever. It's like, no, we're talking top of the funnel. We're just trying to get people's attention. Nobody is going to see your social media post, no matter how effing crazy it is, and go, don't want to work with that company. 0 times that will happen. So just chill. Don't worry. And go crazy. Like, just go crazy. Go nuts.
Isn't it interesting too that like the differentiation needs to happen at top of funnel, but everybody does it backwards. They go, I'm going to do what everybody does at the top of funnel and then say, this is why I'm different. But if you have to tell somebody you're different, it's like having to tell somebody you're funny.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't work. You have to show them and they have to decide on their own. So if you're going to be different, it should be in top of funnel. And then I always say to people in the sales context, I've had maybe 2 times in my whole career, somebody actually said to me, what makes you different than your competitors? I'm not kidding, maybe twice. And when they do, I say, I don't understand what you're asking me. Because I believe that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, value is in the eye of the prospect. So rather than being different, I don't need to be unique. I just have to be the best option that they have on the table. Which means A, I need to know what they have on the table, and B, I have to know what they think makes me the best. So I don't get to tell them why I'm better. I need to ask them what would make me better and then explain my value through that lens. But we fixate. A lot of MSPs fixate, especially the ones who you just don't have a play. Like you're ignorant to this, like knowingly so, and think, well, everybody does this, so I'll just do what everybody does. And then I'll get in there and I'll just want it more, or be smarter, or demonstrate more competence, and that will be enough. But you need to be different as hell at the top. But the truth is that what you need to be at the bottom of the funnel is really determined based on what your prospect wants, not what you think they're going to want ahead of time. Anyway, any thoughts?
No, I totally agree with that. I could give example after example on exactly what you're talking about, but I was in a sales meeting and it went really well. And, we were probably one of the more expensive MSPs in our market. And we had a great meeting. I could tell they were on board. And then at the end of the meeting, they go, do you guys not do phone systems? I was like, yeah, we do phone systems. Do you guys have an issue with your phones? And they go, nope, our phones are great. I was like, cool. Then why'd you bring it up? And they go, because every single MSP that came in before you kept trying to sell us a new phone system. Like, what a great example of not listening to the target market. Like, that's like creating content around like certain, like about your tools. Like some people will post about Rocket Cyber and shit. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Nobody cares. Like, and that's the same, like, why are you even talking about something in a sales meeting? Like, you want them to care? Well, let's just talk about the things they do care about. What are we doing? Like, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because the salesperson got a higher commission on VoIP or something. So, and the other thing just on content, especially on the sales meeting, is I would go in to these sales meetings and it's so crazy. It's funny. 7 years ago, we were one of the only people that the prospect was talking to in the vast majority of cases. In the last year before I left, we were always in there with multiple MSPs. So that's a new reality, especially in markets that are growing. That is definitely a new reality for MSP space. Usually we're just trying to convince the value of MSP and why people need an MSP. Now it's almost always like, no, they already know what it is. Now we're trying to see what's the best one, which definitely changes the sales dynamic quite a bit. And it's funny because these are multi-million-dollar MSPs I'm going up against, super polished salespeople, and I'm the only one almost every time that brings a sweet sales folder presentation with our service tiers and infographics on other services we offer and whatever. And then on the other side, I'm bringing any sales collateral that they mention on the phone that they're struggling with. So if they're struggling with cybersecurity, if they're struggling with backup, if they're struggling with whatever, I would have a separate page in there. And I was one of the only salespeople that brought that. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? You won't spend $500 to print 250 folders and just bring them to every sales meeting? It blew my mind because now we all make an impression, but I'm the one that has this thing on the person's desk. Like, that's how we can incorporate marketing and content into sales. And that's why I always encourage people, like, just think, add content into everything you do and you will succeed. Like, everything should be, how can I turn that into content? Another example, the CrowdStrike thing, which may be a little dated by the time this is posted, but everyone's waiting on content providers to tell them what to say about CrowdStrike. Like, you should not be waiting on content providers to tell you what to say about CrowdStrike. Like, do your research, have your own thoughts and opinion on LinkedIn. I saw Mike from Techie Geeks the same day. He posted a live video explaining on how it happened, what it is, all that good stuff. I'm not sure the prospect truly cares that much, to be honest, on that one thing, but maybe. But it's just the point that he has a content mind. He already knows, cool, I got to create content around this thing. I don't need to wait on anybody or overthink it. I'm just going to create some content around it. Like, that's what we need. More of that.
And so the way I illustrate, or the way I describe this, is like, when you want permission to make content, and or if you want to take content all the way in a way that's going to impact people, is you start with the premise, and then you have to ask yourself, so what? I call it the so what rule. Like, so we say we sell whatever. We have an RMM agent. We have the best RMM in our stack. So my question to you is, who cares?
Nice.
And there is a reason why it's impactful.
Yeah,
but we have to ask ourselves, from the shoes of the audience, of the prospect, why should they care that you're going to put an RMM agent on the computer? Well, then what you do is you put this at the top of a OneNote page. You put the premise or the impact of the product or the service or the feature. You write "so what" underneath it, and then you put on a 15-minute timer, put some lo-fi on, and then just write ad nauseum. Don't filter. Just write everything that you can think of, and have your whole team shout it out and whiteboard this and say things like, "Why does this matter?" With data security or ransomware or whatever. I mean, I'm imagining if I were to make an ad. We should make ads together, by the way, because I have so many ideas for like high quality live action ads that I think would kill.
Yeah.
Like, for cybersecurity, instead of a photo of a guy in a hoodie at an internet cafe in Phuket stealing your data, what if you made a video montage of a dad taking photos of his daughter at every birthday, and then you see him older, a little gray on the sides of the head, and you see a bunch of people comparing their kids, and he goes, and he pulls out his phone and he looks and it says no photos. And he goes, what? And realizes he just lost his memories and the proof that he was there with his daughter his whole life. Mm-hmm. And then you have something on the screen that says, are you willing to lose? What are you willing to gamble with? Mm-hmm. What are you willing to risk? Something like that. And then a little thing that says, secure your legacy, secure your memory, secure your success, secure your future.
Yeah.
And because we showed them, by the way, losing stuff, it doesn't just lose data. It loses an era of your life is missing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I love that.
That's one of my ideas.
And it's funny you brought up that so what, and I think that's just a great exercise. Everyone listening, like, definitely do that, because if someone's trying to talk, like I see on websites, they're talking about specific services and like data loss prevention or whatever, and it's like, yeah, so what? That's such a good way to frame it. And it's funny you say that, because literally in our Microsoft 365 campaign, a whole series of it is things you don't need to care about. And it's like, each one is an image, and it's like things you don't care about. And it was like data loss prevention. And then it's like why you do care about it. And it's like, prevent emails from sending out your sensitive information via email, and securing your data better, right? Like, that is something I get the head nods, right? That's why I created that, because that's where I get head nods. Be like, if you can tell someone like, hey, people can't email out social security numbers, it's a force function or whatever, like that, they do care about. They don't give a shit about the acronym or the name. What they care about is like the outcome of like, yeah, that's cool. Like, would love that. So, and that's from something similar to a so what. We do like the pain points and opportunities document, but it's almost the same thing, because we look at like, what is the pain point, and then what is the opportunity we have to address that pain point. And that's where literally all of our content comes from. So it's spot on.
So the takeaway here is like, good content versus bad content. Here's what I'm kind of hearing you say. First of all, good content tells a story. Bad content gives information.
Mm-hmm.
Good content people can relate to, because it's about outcomes and pains. It's pains and gains. It's not about, and bad content is all about process and procedure, right? Here's a bunch of steps that we do, and blah, blah, blah. Here's a bunch of things, versus here's what you get by working with me.
Steps could be good content though, if done correctly. Some of the most powerful content I've created in the sales process is steps. And the only reason is because the mind of the prospect, as you know, or, like if they don't know exactly what comes next, they put the worst case scenario in their mind. And it's funny.
Right.
I always hear, like, with onboarding, they're just like, I'd have to keep typing the same email. Like, well, this is what happens. This is what happens. This is what happens. And then it's like, I just created like a one pager that perfectly explains, like, okay, day 1, week 1, week 2, week 3, ongoing, like just this simple steps document. And again, as I was writing, I was very happy because I'm like, yeah, this is gold, right? It's not like I was laughing or crying or whatever, but it was like, this is very helpful. Like when they see this, they're gonna be like, oh, nice. My mind is now at ease at what comes next.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that document literally improved our sales conversion like 20% with a simple document. Like nothing changed except that. And so, but yeah, exactly. Like overly talking about things you guys do internally or whatever, it's not that valuable, but there's definitely going to be some opportunities. Like for instance, the VoIP transition. Like people have fear about like, well, am I going to lose my phone numbers? Or like, some stuff really is just going to be informational and there is value in that. But yeah, as a general rule, that's spot on.
Yeah, but there's a difference between using a list or process to create clarity versus explaining things that don't have any effect on them. Because what you're explaining is like, here's the steps to how you get this outcome. Here's the steps to how you get this transformation, this journey, this place you're going.
Yeah.
Versus step 1, like here's the 17 steps we use to set up whatever DMARC settings in your email or whatever. Like nobody cares, right?
They just want it done. Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Right. Okay. So let's just rapid fire a couple of takeaways for somebody who's listening to this going, well, okay, great. What you're telling me, Taher, is that the content I'm using is derivative and maybe it's not particularly impactful. What does somebody do right now? Let's say they've even invested into a content pack, or one of their vendors has been giving them material and but they don't have 40 hours a week to sit around and tell stories on a whiteboard. What do they do about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say audit as much as possible. Like go on your website, like just spend an hour, go on your website and like just go through it, and you'll probably end up very sad by the end of it. And you have to understand, like that should be your number one selling tool is your website. And yet you just went through it and realized it sucked. So like that could, like when it comes to content, like all roads lead to the website. If your website can't convert, or if you're not happy with what it says, then like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, I talk to MSP Camp members. We're updating a bunch of their websites now, slow, because we're not even selling that service, because I'm only doing like one a month because I want to make sure it's done right. But like I tell members, I'm like, hey, don't run a campaign until your site can convert, because you're just kind of wasting dollars. Like, so yeah, I would say like number 1 is that. And then number 2, like make sure every service you have in every industry that you serve, 1 is on the website, and then you have a corresponding like sales sheet for that, corresponding infographic for that, corresponding YouTube video for that. So you have like your content pack ready to go. Like it's on your site. You've got the industry and services, like infographics and sales sheets, and then you got a video explaining each one on your YouTube. That way, like you have that content for the middle and bottom of the funnel stuff ready to go. And very few people are taking that effort, and that does not take a lot of time. Like it really doesn't. Like most of the time on the services, like that is where vendor content actually comes in pretty nice, because they have spent the time to create a really nice, white label sales sheet on why this provides value to the client versus the technical aspects of it. So yeah, I would say that's like number 1, like just auditing the site and making sure you have content for every service and industry that you serve, ideally case studies too, and videos for each one of those. And like you are set up more than 95% of other MSPs when it comes to content. Then you can repurpose a lot of that shit for top of the funnel stuff as well. So like that would be a really good place to start when it comes to content.
It's great advice. And I'll just add to it that any content you're getting, just look at it under the microscope of, should I categorize this as top of funnel, mid funnel, or bottom funnel? Meaning, is this the first thing I want them to hear from me? is this something I want them to hear from me after they've engaged? Or is this something I want them to hear or see from me as they are considering pulling the trigger?
Yeah.
Those are the three different tiers. And just, it's possible that you're using bottom of funnel content at the top or top of funnel content at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And just by reorganizing it in the right sort of buyer, in the right stage of the buyer's journey is really critical. Mm-hmm. And man, I had another thought. Shit, I had a great idea. Hang on, let me find it. It literally just vanished from my brain, but I really wanted to say it.
Can you hear this?
Yes.
All right, nice. So I'll just play this. It's probably not going to help you find what you're looking for, but...
What was my idea? I just had something so critical I was going to say. Let me just pick back up and finish that thought.
It's going to drive you crazy now that you can't think of it.
I'll think of it at 4 a.m. and I'm going to shoot awake and call you. So what you want to do is when you are getting content from somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop using it, but make sure that you've categorized it appropriately. Sift that into 3 buckets. Top of funnel, so this is the first thing they hear from you. Mid funnel is like you've engaged, you maybe even had a discovery call. Now this is the thing you're going to nurture to sort of demonstrate additional competence and authority and stay top of mind to keep things.
Or emails come in perfectly. Just want to.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have bottom of funnel. So now that we've presented, what are we doing to sort of seal the deal and make sure that they feel warm and safe and fuzzy moving forward? Exactly. So that's something that it's really important that you start with. But the main thing with any content is make sure that it is relevant. And the way you do that is by asking some people who are not you to give you honest feedback about what you're doing. So here's my advice. Go get 5-10 people that are your aunt or grandma or Gen Z nephew or whoever that aren't in your business and do a couple of these. Have them go to your website and say, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to set a 60-second timer on your phone. Go to my website. And then when the 60 seconds goes off, close my site. And then I want you to send me a text and answer these 3 questions. What do I sell? How do you get it? And why do you need it?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And if they're not a buyer, say, what do I sell? Who needs it? And how do they get it? You know? Mm-hmm. And then you do that with 60 seconds. Then you do it with 30 seconds. Then you do it with 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And you will learn that it is probable that your website doesn't answer those questions, which makes me wonder, how do you expect to convert anybody if you can't even convert people who are actively on your side, altruistically looking for the answers to those questions? But this is what your buyer needs to know. What do you sell? Who's it for? Why do they need it? How do they get it?
Yeah.
And if you can do those things, and if you can put yourself through that gauntlet, then you will have a framework of what's working and not working, and it will help you drive in the right direction. Sales and marketing is not about being loud and likable. Mm-hmm. It's a craft, just like IT is a craft. And I don't know who told you it was going to be free or easy, but they lied. There is a journey on this, but if you do the journey, then you will get to reap the results, right?
Yeah, totally.
Taher, any last sort of closing thoughts on the topic of content, bad content, good talk, marketing, sales, anything like this that people should know?
One, I think this was a lot of fun. I think the biggest takeaway is the MSPs that are succeeding with marketing, almost always, the owner is on board with marketing. And they understand it to a high level degree. The owner does not need to be setting up pixels. They do not need to be doing A/B testing. They do not need to be doing a lot of the technical aspects of marketing. They may not even have somebody doing a lot of those technical aspects. You don't need all that stuff to succeed, just to be honest. But it is the MSP owners that are willing to invest in marketing for a long time, potentially invest in a person at their MSP, and just being on board with understanding marketing does work in the MSP space. It really, really does. I look back on, this is the best way to describe MSP marketing. I love jiu-jitsu. I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu. 95% of the people that start jiu-jitsu never get to the blue belt, which is literally the next belt up, because it's very difficult. It's not like karate where you get a bunch of belts. There's only 5 belts. 95% of people drop out before they get to blue. But once you get to blue, there's a very high chance you're going to get to black. That is MSP marketing. It takes a lot of time and effort and competency to get to your blue belt in MSP marketing. But when you do, you're in the 5% MSPs that are constantly growing.
Yeah.
So just understand it does, as Brian said, just like everything, takes a lot of time and effort and takes your buy-in and commitment. You don't have to be doing all the work, but you do have to have a high level understanding. You do have to help outline the strategy. You do have to help hire either people or agencies and keep them accountable. There is no set it and forget it in MSP marketing at all. So I would just encourage you, especially after listening to this podcast, you're like, yeah, I do want to get more involved with this. Become a learner, invest in marketing. And now that you work with Brian, you know how to actually close the leads that are coming in. So it'll absolutely lead to growth. MSP marketing works. It just takes a commitment.
Amazing. And anybody who doesn't yet know, Taher, what is MSP Camp? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we basically, like MSP Camp started, we just published the content that worked at our MSP. So I was the vice president of marketing and sales at an MSP. We went from like 3 people in a warehouse to about 5 million in annual revenue. And I was like, I pitched the owner because I wasn't an equity partner. I was like, hey, can I just take all the shit I've been creating and put it on a site and just see if it'll work? Mm-hmm. So that was a minimal viable product about a year and a half ago. And, fortunately it struck a chord. I think it's just because, again, our content's kind of weird, especially the top of the funnel stuff, but it works. So it really kind of struck a chord, and now it's definitely professionalized a lot since our minimal viable product. So we publish marketing campaigns, marketing content, tech tips, all types of stuff on a membership website. Super simple,
and way more affordable than I thought it was going to be, by the way, which was surprising to me. So we'll have links to all that stuff in the notes of the show. Taher, you're the man. Looking forward to seeing you some upcoming events. I should do some more webinars and stuff leading up to. For listeners, thanks so much for sticking with us. This was, to me, really, really insightful to get to hear Taher. And I know he self-deprecated at the top, but honestly, man, you should give yourself a lot of credit, because you really are a force in the industry, and you're helping a lot of people. So thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, y'all. See you.